Alright, hello everybody on my channel. Today I'm going to be discussing a feature in Yaesu System Fusion, which is DGID in group mode. Alright, now if you do not have your technician's license or ham radio's license, feel free to watch, but I don't know how much this will make sense to you. I'm going to try to do the best to make sense of it for you. Well, first off, group mode is a mode that only works in digital. Both these radios have the capability of digital and analog. Right now I'm in FM, which is an analog. I have my FT-200 and analog as well. And this is my FT-70D. I love this radio. It is awesome, and so is this one. Okay, well, to give a little demonstration of what I'm talking about, if I put this radio into digital, DN, I'm on the same frequency as the FT-200, and I key up, you'll hear the digital noise. Alright? Now, of course, moving it back to FM, you will hear my voice. Test, test. Alright? The awesome thing about this radio is that if I put it in automatic mode select, the DN stands for automatic mode select. It means that the radio that I am currently have the camera on is set to receive in both FM and in digital modes. So right now, if I key up on the FT-70 in FM, I'm in FM. If I change this radio and put this radio in digital, even though this radio is on FM, the moment that I key up on digital, you will now see that turn to DN. And my information scrolls up on the screen because that is the way digital works. I have this radio programmed with my call sign. Let's put this radio back into FM, and let's put this radio back into FM. Well, group mode will not work in FM. And so by default, when you hold down your group mode button, you switch to digital. By default as well, group mode on the FT-200, which is what we're going to be entering into, is group mode, so we can discuss DGID. We will hold down group mode, and when we go back, we are now assigned the digital only mode. Okay, so what is group mode and what does it do? Well, if you're in say an event and you have multiple users and everyone has a fusion capable radio, everyone can, I wouldn't say make their conversations private, but make it more difficult for them to be interrupted. It does give you some level of privacy, but of course, anybody can eventually figure out what you're transmitting on. First thing we'll do on the FT-70D, now that we're in group mode, is we're going to hold down mode. And mode gives us the option to change two specific characteristics. your transmit DGID, and your receive DGID. So for now, let's set our transmit. Let me take it down here so I have a little bit more control. It's kind of sliding around here on me, but trying to hold the phone and do this at the same time is not so easy. But this is the nature of the beast. All right. Now we're going to hit mode again, which is now going to allow us to change our receive DGID. I'm just going to go up. It seems like that might be easier. Keep in mind now that we are solely in digital mode. FM is gone. It's not even an option. All right, we'll hold down mode again. Now we are back at our main screen. And this one is ready to go. We have set our transmit and receive to 0. This radio now will receive all traffic coming in. DGID is assigned 0 to 99. 0 allows all traffic to come in, and 1 through 99 does not, depending, but we'll get into that. All right, so now I'm going to go to my FT-200, hold down group mode, and as you can see, I had already had these set. So I'm gonna go down and change these to 0, because really I should have had all this done, but sorry, anyway, whatever. And now we're gonna go down to the RX, and we're gonna set that to 0. Well, most of you can figure out what's going to happen. All right, now I'm gonna go back to group mode. All right, I am now in group mode on my FT-200. My receive and my transmit are at 0. My call sign's coming up because the FT-200 is transmitting out my ID intermittently, and vice versa. The FT-200 will do that as well at some point. But anyway, because the last transmission was from this radio to this one. So, of course, now in group mode, all call signs will appear as they transmit. All right, so let's transmit on the FT-70D and watch what happens. Test, test. Now let's set the radio here and transmit on the FT-200. Test, test. All right, now you see how my call sign came through, and there's a 200 attached to the end of it. That is an identifier that I added into whenever I set up my call sign, so that other users will know that I am operating on an FT-200. But that's neither here nor there. All right, let's get into this. Within the DGID interface, or the way in which it operates, is that if your receive DGID is set to 0 on both radios, all traffic will come through. It does not matter what your transmit is if your receive is at 0. So let's test that theory. We are going to set our transmit DGID to 10. Press the button to make the radio accept that setting. Hold down GM. And now we're back at group mode, and as you see, the transmit TX was at 10. Let's key up. Test, test. It breaks a squelch because the FT-70D is set to 0. Again, because the RX is set to 0, let's test that same theory and set our transmit DGID to 10. Hit mode again, hold down mode, And now we are back in group mode again. I will transmit. Test, test. My information is showing up. Now here's what happens when you set your RX DGID to 20. I'm going to set it to 20 on this radio and transmit from the FT-70D. Test, 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 test. Notice my identification shows, but because I am on a DGID RX of 20, the radio has now blocked the incoming transmission from the FT-70D, which is the whole concept of it, because you're trying to filter out unwanted traffic. All right. Now I can do the exact same thing with this and show you what happens when I change the DGID receive to a different number. It's the same concept. It will work the exact same way. If you do not have your DGID set to either 0 or to the same transmit numerical value, you will not be able to receive. So again, if the RX is 20, then on the FT-70D, I must set my transmit to 20 so that all radios will be able to receive my DGID of 20. Hold down mode. Now I'm transmitting a DGID of 20. Test, test. Test, test. All right. So if my RX is 20 and my transmit is 20 on here, we can do this, we can reverse it, but it's not necessary. It will work in the opposite direction if I set my receive to 20 and my transmit to 20, but that's what we will do here. Ideally, for everyone to have conversations that are not interrupted, everyone should set their DGID TX and their DGID RX to the same values. On the FT-70D, we will hold down mode, and we will set, by hitting mode again, to the receive selecting side. We will set that to a receive of 20 as well. Hold down mode to confirm the values. Now both radios are both set to the same RX, TX, and the RX and the TX. Anyone that has different numerical values into their radio will not be able to break the squelch in either of the radios. Now, if you were at an event and somebody began to scroll through their DG receive IDs at 1, 2, 3, if they were, they had nothing else to do and they just wanted to capture incoming traffic, once they got to DGID 20, well, they would say to themselves, obviously their transmit is at 20. Their values would match, and then they would be able to break into your conversation. So I have this little paper here that I made of radio A and radio B. We will say that the FTM200 is radio A, which we will write 200 here, and radio B is the FT-70D. Let's say for radio A, if we want to make it more complex for those to interrupt our communications, we will set the FTM200, which is radio A, to a DGID transmit of, I don't know, let's say 31. All right, so the FTM200 radio A is now going to be TXing 31. The FT-70D, we are going to make the TX 23. Hold down mode to input the value. And now the FT-70D is set to a transmit value of, I believe, oh, it's not showing me. Let's go into C, of 23. So the FT-70D is now transmitting at 23. TX. All right. So the FT-70D is transmitting at TX23, and the FTM200 is transmitting at 31. So what do we do? Well, if the FTM200 is transmitting at 31, then we must, set the receive value on the FT-70D to 31. Because we're transmitting on the 200 on 31, we must set the receive on the FT-70D 31 as well. Now, because on the FT-70D, we're going to change our transmit to 23 and lock in those values and hold down mode to confirm. We now must set the RX on the FTM200 to 23. Good, well, the values have been accepted, but hold down group mode. Now, as you can see, we have an RX of 23 on the FTM200, and we have a transmit of 23 on the FT-70D. We have a TX of 31 on the FTM200, and we have a receive value of 31 on the FT-70D. Test, test. We transmitted successfully to the FTM200. Now we will do the same thing in reverse. Test, test. That's basically it. If all values are 0 on all radios, all traffic will go through on both radios. If they're set to 0. If both radios are set to the same TX and RX DGID, only those radios that are set to those values will be able to communicate with each other. All other traffic will be filtered out. If you set your TX DGID on one radio, on all the radios, then all the other radios must receive on RX31, and vice versa. You're crisscrossing your DGIDs, but I think you're getting the idea. I don't want to complicate it by now over-explaining it. So that's the way to do it. That's how it works. If you do not want to set all the radios to the same DGID, then you set your TXs and your RXs to the opposing numbers. I hope that helped. I hope that clarified your DGID in group mode. Leave comments if there's any questions. I hope that I was able to clear this up. KC3U and I, 7 3s.